than with the Palestinians. Now, is that not true?
Yes. There are many, many different genetic measures. And this is what a lot of the confusion. You can take one measure and you can say, look, we're 98% similar to chimpanzees. You can take another genetic measure and say we're 50% genetically related to our child. So how can you only be 50% related to your child and 98% similar to a chimpanzee?
Well,
the answer is that it depends on the measure you've taken.
The
now
great
you're talking
difference
about
is what you're expressing, though, in the way Christians, the particular dispensational premillennialists, identify with Israel being primary to the fulfillment of the prophecies of, say, Daniel and all of those. It's extremely important with that.
Okay. But it depends on the measure. You take a Y chromosome measure, you get one picture. You take a mitochondrial DNA measure, you get a different
exactly
picture.
what I'm saying.
And but the best measure is the DNA, nuclear DNA. The Y chromosome is only one small part of the nuclear DNA. The mitochondrial DNA isn't even in the nuclear DNA. When you average all the nuclear DNA out, that's where you get the best measure. And these measures are getting more and more refined every year.
One quick question. There's, as you say, there's a lot of evidence that there's about a 5% higher IQ rate among East Asians than among white people, Europeans around the world. What is your theory and the explanation of the incredible creative output of Europeans, both scientific, technical, cultural, in every aspect of human endeavor? Could it be the tremendous variations among the European groups, whereas the East Asians are much more similar in terms of their genetic DNA patterns, so there's more variation, more creativity in some areas? What is your theory as to the tremendous European scientific, cultural, artistic output over the centuries in regard to the IQ differences?
There are several possible theories. Let me tell you Richard Lynn's best shot in his latest book, which is that it's personality. That the Chinese, they may have a slightly higher IQ, but they also have a more introverted and, say, passive personality. And so under certain conditions, they will tend to not rock the boat or be especially entrepreneurial or enterprising in the scientific domain. And he thinks it's that is the main differentiator between the Chinese and the whites. So to get great creativity, you need two things. You need high IQ, but you also need this particular kind of personality push dimension that some white people have, but maybe the Chinese don't have as much.
Quick question. I guess about December or January of the American Renaissance magazine, they talked about the book called The Affirmative Action Hoax by Dr. Ferrone. And what he said was the quotas were originally put in to keep the Jewish students out, but the Jews dominated intellectually. And now you have a case where they're using quotas to keep white students out. And it seems like, from what I understand, every IQ test shows that Palestinians and Jews are higher than Europeans. So I was wondering how you would explain this when they both came from Israel, so to speak, and this is part of that region where the average IQ test is only 85.
Well, Jewish IQ, it seems pretty clear, in fact it's absolutely obvious, that Jews have the highest IQ in the world. The lowest estimate that I've seen is about 108. The highest estimate I've seen is about 115. But compared to white Europeans, Jews on average have a higher IQ. And it's not just true in the United States where white people, Nordics, essentially did put quotas in at Harvard and so on to keep the percentage of Jews down to 10% or whatever. This was prevalent for nearly 40, 50 years before that in Europe. In Germany, in the 1920s and 1930s, the eugenicists there, the genetic scientists, were already noting that, for example, in Prussia, one of the universities, 6% was Jewish, even though only 1%, less than 1% of all the surround was Jewish. So they were way overrepresented in universities. In all over Hungary and Poland and so on, the medical schools, they all had quotas, some of them very generous quotas, like 25%. So 1 or 2% of the population was allowed to have up to, but no more than, 25% of the medical school placements. So this indicates that way back then, 1880 all the way through 1920, Jewish achievement in universities was disproportionate. If you look at chess masters from Russia and so on, many of them are Jewish. Nobel Prize winners in science, 30% are Jewish. Now if you go to Israel, the IQ does seem to drop. And nobody quite knows. The Ashkenazi IQ in Israel is about 102 or 103, which is still higher than Western Europe. And the Sephardic Jewish IQ, I'm blocking on the exact percentage. In the Arabs, this is from from Israeli military IQ data. This is the most recent study, and I read it to look at the Arab IQ. It's 86 in Israel, which is exactly what you find the Egyptians find, or the Moroccans find, or the Algerians find. So the Israelis find exactly the same thing. So the Israelis test themselves. The Israeli IQ is lower than the Jewish IQ of Western Europe or of North America, but it is still higher than anything else in the region, and slightly higher than Western Europe. So they are the highest IQ population that we know of in the world, and well, we could speculate about why it came about.
Well, we've kept you on your feet far longer than we should have. Thank you very much, Dr. Weston. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. At this point, I would like to have those who are going to make a few announcements, particularly about their groups. I think Gordon Baum has addressed, I believe, every single conference. Gordon is a great colleague and friend, and he has for years led, I think, one of the most effective grassroots and activist organizations on our side, the Council of Conservative Citizens. And it's a real pleasure to welcome Gordon back again to the 7th American Renaissance Conference. Please give him a very warm welcome.
Very, very briefly, most of you have heard this before if you've been here before. The Council of Conservative Citizens, I'm the CEO. Our president, Tom Dover from Atlanta, is here someplace. We're the largest and best known of the right-wing membership organizations out in the United States. We have members in every state in the union. We have chapters in 28 states, and we have members in 13 foreign countries, enough in London to start a chapter, but they probably run afoul of their hate crime laws. But a lot of people say, well, why do you even have an organization? Well, what's good is it if everybody knows what the problem is, but there's no way to